Now, in the past few days, we have been bringing you highlights of the great migration from the Maasai Mara Reserve. We have seen a range of wildlife, including lions, elephants, and thousands of wildebeest crossing the Mara River. Today marks the last day of our special coverage. Let's now cross over to Sonny Methu. She's been following that spectacular event there from the Mara River. Sonny, so what have been the highlights of the past 2 days?
Well, Beatrice, it's quite sad that we're leaving today, but if you love adventure, and I do, Maasai Mara is definitely a place you can come over and over again and not experience the same thing. The highlight, of course, the stars of this whole event is the spectacular crossing of the wildebeest aside with zebras, and of course the Thompson gazelle. We have the resident crocodile waiting on the river to just attack or catch them. This time we did not get to see that, but we actually experienced a lot of wildebeest crossing, and also we saw lots of lions, as you mentioned. It was my first time to actually see lions that up close, and so many of them too. We also got very lucky to see a cheetah go up a tree. This is something I've never seen. This is something our driver, who was born here, has never seen. There's so much good stuff that happened for us during this trip that was so different from what we've experienced in the past few years.
Well, there were some things that you mentioned, Sonny, that have been different, and you have covered the migration a number of times now. Tell us about those things that are different this time around. How has it changed over time, and what stands out this year?
Well, a lot has remained the same. As I mentioned, the stars on the show, the wildebeest, they're bound to come across, the lions, the predators of Mara. A lot has stayed the same in that way. But what has stood out for me this time that has really changed is the effect that this is having on the local community. I remember coming here 5 years ago, and you could barely find a small shop or a small town where you can get a few things that you needed. But right now, there's so many small towns that have sprung up. The Mara is becoming bigger in terms of population boom, but also the number of tourists. In my opinion, what I've seen and experienced at the rivers, struggling to get the best shot, as you mentioned earlier, it's becoming more and more difficult. Thousands of tourists are just coming down here, including domestic, local tourists like us who are from Kenya. Usually we'd go to the beach or enjoy ourselves elsewhere. But more and more Kenyans are coming, but also Chinese tourists. They're really coming in large numbers. But also, this has had both positive and negative impact on the wildlife. What is happening now is Maasai are now selling more and more of their land. And one interview we spoke to says that there's a wall of fences that might not have any positive impact with wildlife. People are putting up, lodges after lodges. But also, the Maasai now are feeling the positive effect of conservation. We have more conservancies coming up from a previous number of 8 to now about 13 of them in just 2 years. So conservancies are becoming more and more. Maasais are seeing the direct benefit. There are lots of trusts. There are a lot of influences on women and children that are coming directly from tourists and from the migration of the Maasai Mara.
Well, Sonny, you have mentioned conservation efforts there. So just give us a little bit more clarity on those conservation efforts. What is being done? Is it being done? Is enough being done to safeguard this wonder for future generations?
Well, really, it depends on who you ask, Beatrice, because a lot of people we spoke to are very happy that these conservancies are coming up. There was lots of grazing happening. There was lots of farming happening. But now with these conservancies, it basically means land has been let free for wildlife to roam. But also it means Maasai culture can coexist with wildlife. However, not enough is being done in terms of these lodges coming up, the number of land being sold out. As you can see, currently what's happening, the size of Maasai Mara National Reserve is almost the same size as the conservancies in the Maasai Mara, which means both the government and also the people of the Mara take ownership of this. So there's some positive and some negative. But according to most experts, they suggest that it's about time the government put their foot down and decide that we don't need more lodges, we don't need more fences. What we need is the land to be let free for wildlife.
All right, Sonny Methu for us following that spectacular event there from the wonderful Maasai Mara. Thank you.